right now. You've heard me do a lot of messages on where I think we are in time, the preparation that we are going through to get there from here. How do we know where we are in time? How do we know if we're doing the right thing? How do we know if we are even in Yahweh's will? Because many testify of, keep me in your will. I want to do your will, your perfect will, permissive will. So many testify of wills. And just before I go into Millennial Reign, I just want to kind of bring something up front, a couple of pieces, where there is a spirit going on at this time. A spirit that is proven to be a false spirit. It mimics the Holy Spirit, and it has now infiltrated the church, traditional church. And they call it the Kundalini spirit. Kundalini spirit. Kundalini spirit. Kundalini. And I may be spelling it somewhat close, but that's about it. To pull it up, I'm sure that'll get you there. The Kundalini spirit. And what it is, and I'm only just now starting to go back to it. I recognized it a few years ago. But on our meeting on Thursday night, we were talking about it, and it kind of brought it back to my memory. And so we're all looking at the different spirits that are now infiltrating the church, parading itself. Many people are thinking that it's the Holy Spirit, but it has been truly recognized as a very demonic spirit, misleading many people. So traditional teachers, some of them are beginning to recognize, but a lot of them are operating in it. They're using it to make others believe that they are prophetic or they are prophets or what have you, and they're leading people into a false spirit. Now, I won't go too far into it, but how do we recognize a false spirit? When that spirit is against Torah, when that spirit is not teaching the law of Moshe, when that spirit can clearly go against Yahweh, his ways. So I'll be looking into that further as we're, as a group of ministers are now going into it and looking. And I thought it had enough merit that I know of, because I've done some research some years ago. The origin of it is out of India. And so what I've seen, just going back in my memory, what I've seen was a very particular Indian guru, I can't think of his name at the moment, as he was going from place to place, teaching how to go into spiritual matters and cleanse oneself from worldly things. And of course, while he's doing this, he's collecting them. Cleanse yourself from all these worldly possessions and live only for God and him alone. And so they are teaching spirituality, so they're going into spirituality. It looked very much like Pentecostal church, and so many people are being drawn to this. And the guru, And I think it's spread so far that you don't need just this particular guru anymore. It's now anyone who has the knowledge of it and understanding. They're able to teach others to gravitate toward this spirit, demonic spirit, that is. That's one. Second thing I want to bring front is we're coming into a very particular time. Although I said I'm not going to go into a lot of the numbers as I've been really teaching that, today I'm going to go into the Millennial Reign, or the kingdom being reestablished. And so something was brought to my attention on last week by Michael Lane and his wife Roberta. They gave me some information that I didn't know yet. I heard a little bit and I searched, but I couldn't find it. So I kind of forgot. But last week he brought it to my attention and he said, have you heard of this law that was just passed? And so he opened it up and we began to look at it. And Roberta said it was H.R. 1242, a law that was just passed in the United States. It went through Congress, the House of Representatives, H.R., and the Senate. As of last year, it was introduced. May 1st, 2017. January 8th, just a few weeks back, it was passed, ratified in Congress. It is now law. It's no longer a bill, it is now law. It's been passed, both House and Senate. That they will now acknowledge 400 years of being in this country. African Americans, African slaves, however you want to name it, but they are now putting together, well, they have put together a law that now says we shall acknowledge by constitutional law that Africans who were enslaved, now African Americans, were brought here 400 years ago, and they're going to celebrate the anniversary of 400 years as a presence in this country. Can we give Yahweh a praise on that? Now, we're saying here in this country, but you know, as it goes here, it goes around the world as well. So it's gonna be recognized in South America. It's gonna be recognized in the islands. It's gonna be recognized in England or Europe. It's gonna be recognized because once we start making noise about a 400-year anniversary, this is what it states. It has, it's you know, it's a good little size, so it has many things. But from my memory, what I remember is it's going to promote religious settings, educational settings, communities, activities around the United States that will publicly acknowledge the 400th year anniversary of African Americans' presence in this country. It has in it enslavement and now free, emancipated, who are now being recognized as 400 years. I keep saying 400 years, yeah? 400 years of being in this country. So religiously, educational, that means college, regular schools. So if they had a problem with 1 month, wait till next year. And they named the year. They named the year of 2019 2019. Now, here's the kicker. They have a cap on it. July 1st, 2020 is the cutoff date. So they will recognize it for a year, and then in 2020, it will have a cutoff date from, the celebrations that they're now promoting and saying, hey, through Congress, it is a law that we promote and recognize, acknowledge 400 years in this country. Now, what does that mean? And quickly, Genesis 15:13. Genesis 15:13. Speaking to Abraham, and your descendants will be enslaved and mistreated for 400 years. But the nation whom enslaved them I shall judge, and I shall bring them out with great possession. Now, they may not recognize that or see it, because I see that they have a little clause in there. They have a little part in there that's saying funding will come from private donations, meaning as Congress, we're not footing the bill. That's pretty much what they're saying. They're saying any religious organization or educational facility or community organizations, it will be funded by private funds, by anyone else. But they don't know Yahweh. Yahweh's word is going to be done. You know what? All I wanted them to do really is acknowledge it. Because now you can't deny it, because now it's on the books as a law. Here's the conflict. Well, this country wasn't established for 400 years. They're recognizing even before 1776 independence from Great Britain. So that even connects us to Britain. Wow. So I'm gonna stop there, but I couldn't wait to tell you that part. That is, I'm seeing things come to pass before they happen. And I'm very much encouraged that Yahweh's word is going to do exactly what he's designed it to do. So, the Millennial Reign. I want to begin to take notice on what can we expect. You've heard me teach on it before, but it was fragmented. Right now, I'm going to really concentrate on the millennial kingdom. When Yahshuah returns, the southern and the northern kingdom come back together, reign as one people. Now, you've heard me say many times, Matthew's chapter 25, the reign of heaven shall be as 10 virgins, but 5 are foolish, 5 are wise. I've taught on that many times, how even though we see 5 going into the kingdom, but that 5 will represent all 12 tribes. Because to get 12 tribes, all you need is one from each tribe. And you have the whole southern and northern kingdom back together. Representation. Because when Yahshuah comes back, not everyone is going with him. We see that in Matthew's 25. 5 foolish, 5 wise. I take that very serious. So it's not just, no matter what, I'm going to make it in. No. We have to strive for it. We have to fight for it. We have to live for it. We have to live righteously. The scripture says, Pray that you are found worthy. And I pray that I am found worthy. So I'm doing everything I know to do. Everything the Torah tells me to do, I want to do, because I need to make it in. I need to make it into this kingdom. You know, traditionally we've been taught, you know, we keep our minds focused on heaven and things above, you know. But right here, we can have heaven right here. Why do we need to die to make it into heaven? Let's start recognizing that heaven comes to earth. In a time, but it comes to earth. And in the meantime, we can live as though heaven has already come. And recognize it, because it will start first in the kingdom. And this is why he had to destroy it to rebuild it. So let's begin to open up and look at what will restoration look like. So right now we're going to be in the book of Acts, chapter 1. And I'm going to go through 1 through 11 in the book of Acts. The first account I made, O Theophilus, of all that Yahshuah began both to do and to teach, until the day when he was taken up, after giving instructions through the set-apart Spirit to the emissaries whom he had chosen, to whom he also presented himself alive after his suffering by many infallible proofs, being seen by them for 40 days, speaking concerning the reign of Elohim. And meeting with them, he commanded them not to leave Jerusalem, but to wait for the promise of the Father, which you have heard from me. Because Yochanan, John, truly immersed in water, but you shall be immersed in the set-apart Spirit not many days from now. So, when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Master, would you at this time restore the reign to Jerusalem? And if you may remember, I spoke on this a little more heavily before, but just briefly, what they were asking for was out of order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 holy days. There are 7 events that are prevalent in the holy days that we do. And what Yahshuah was there to do was fulfill the first one. But what they were looking for was number 5, 6, and 7 is what they were asking about, the reign of the kingdom. The reign of the kingdom don't come until the latter rain or the fall feast. This is why I believe so much we need to prepare our minds, our hearts and minds, on his return. But whether he come during the spring feast or the fall feast, he makes that choice. But I believe he's pointing to a particular side because of everything I read and see. And so you know what I teach, so I won't go through that at this moment. But there is a balance that he was bringing at the present state of mind. Let's go back 2,000 years. He's alive, a little less than 2,000 years. He's alive. He's with the 12 disciples, or taught ones, called out ones, and he's explaining the kingdom to come. So let's right away form a wise deduction. If it's the kingdom to come, it's not at present. But what they are looking for is the kingdom to come, because he's talking to them about the kingdom to come. They knew that a Messiah was supposed to come, and now you are the Messiah are you the one that is to come, or do we look for another? Which John asked. But now we're right after, just before his death, and then he'll also continue to speak after his death. I'll have that shortly. But as he spoke to them about you. And I want you to take that personal. About you. He knew your name. And I won't say he tried to call each of our names to them, but he described you. He described us as a reigning king that came from all nations, all tongue, all people, that the kingdom would represent many groups of people. The sea. I will be in the sea for 3 days, just as Jonah. Second bullet, and meeting with them, he commanded them not to leave Jerusalem. Very important, because they were going out teaching. Now he says, stay here until you have been visited by the Holy Spirit. And so now I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking this may be right at his transition. Right after his transition. I have to read a little more to because sometimes I'm right on the spot coming through with some thoughts. Because you're truly immersed in water, but you shall be immersed in the set-apart Spirit not many days from now. So that right there tells me that this is right behind his crucifixion. And so if this is right after the Mashiach, after he has been crucified, he is now returned to the disciples or the taught ones to give them an eye view of the reign that they could expect. And so the reign would be, as he says, so when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Master, will you at this time restore the reign to Israel? And so again, that right there, it takes me right back on the other side, because I'm thinking about the conversation I know they had was just before he was crucified, because they were looking for him to take the kingdom. But when Yahshuah was conquered by death, remember the two brothers who was walking, and they had at this point, they were very sad walking back from that period of time and saying, Yahshuah caught up with them, and he had already died. And he asked, what is the matter at this point? And they asked, are you the only one anywhere around Nazareth or Jerusalem that have not heard what have taken place in Jerusalem? And what had taken place is 3 days of torture. Yahshuah died and was buried, and he said he would rise on the 3rd day. And today is the 3rd day. We thought he was the one. We thought he was getting ready to take the kingdom. So all of this is going through their mind, and they're thinking about what he had been teaching them, and they knew he was the one. But today is the 3rd day. But they had no understanding as to who they were talking to. It wasn't until the next morning when he broke bread with them, because they had convinced him to stay the night. It's getting dark. So the 3rd day, just picture it. On the 3rd day, he is now walking with them, and they don't know who he is. Now, there's another testimony of Miriam, who thought he was who? The gardener. Right? So this one, he's talking to 2 people, and they're like, the sun is going down. Stay with us, for the day is spent. So he did. And he got up. And as they were breaking bread for breakfast, they recognized him. They recognized his talk. And when they recognized him, they were in jubilant surprise. And they was like, the master. And so he went on to continue on. And so as we continue with what they were asking, verse 7 through 11, and he said to them, it is not for you to know the time or seasons which the Father has put in his own authority, but you shall receive power when the set-apart Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses in Jerusalem, and in all Judea and Shamaron, and to the ends of the earth. And having said this, while they were looking on, he was taken up, and a cloud hid him from their sight. And as they were gazing into the heavens as he went up, see, 2 men stood by them dressed in white, who also said, Men of Gilgal, who do you stand looking up into the heavens? Why do you stand looking up into the heavens? This same Yahshuah who was taken up from you into the heaven shall come in the same way as you saw him go into heaven. So now we are on the backside, without a doubt, of Yahshuah, who has now risen. Because here is another space of time. Remember, he stayed with them for 40 days, right? So we know that that's a period of time that he was with them, both eating and teaching with them. And so now he is being taken up. And I have to think about all of my pieces and parts, want to make sure I'm on the post side of the 40 days. I'll have to do more research in this and balance that part out. But what I want to focus on is that we know he has now been taken into heaven. He has been crucified. His blood have been applied. And so just as they applied the blood to the doorpost coming out of Egypt, now the blood is being applied to Israel. So I want to go further into the Millennial Reign. We went back 2,000 years. Now I'm going ahead to a 1,000-year reign. So I'm going to look at the prophet Isaiah, who has some really major insight that Yahweh has given to him. And he is really one of the first major prophets that we have to begin to absorb his words. And it shall be in the latter days that the mountain of the house of Yahweh is established on the top of the mountains, and shall be established, exalted above the hills. And all nations shall flow to it. And many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways. And let us walk in his paths. For out of Zion come forth the Torah, law, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. So we already looked some at the second temple that was also torn down. Remember, Yahshuah also gave us a prophecy Not one stone will remain upon another. Speaking of the temple, right? Another question of the taught ones or disciples. And so he explained, not one stone shall remain upon another. So I'm thinking about this with the Wailing Wall, as they call it, that is there today. That's more than one stone that everybody visits and put their prayers in and everything. So the next question is that the correct site? We'll find out at some point. Because the third temple will be built not by government. So this is one reason I want to look at it, because right now, what's in Jerusalem is, as I told you before, space holder. I don't care how many zeros you have, but not until the next lowest number comes, there's no value until at least the one comes in front of all the zeros, and then there's value. So right now, the scripture says, do not measure the outer court, because it's going to be given over to the Gentiles who will trample underfoot. So look at that. That's twice. So Israel, the people, as salt, was thrown out because we lost our savor or our flavor. And he said, what good is salt once it has lost its flavor or savor? There's nothing good of it but to be cast out and trampled under the feet of men. And I think we can give testament to that. So here's also the temple that will be trampled over. And he says, for time, times, and half time. So even though I've taught a lot on that, that's 3.5 years. And so I believe when we look at this, it's not talking about the whole time period. It's pointing to something. It's pointing to Jacob's troubles. Jacob's trouble is a 7-year period of time that comes in at the end. So when you see Jacob's troubles, know all things are about to conclude, not as in finish, but the kingdom of man is coming to an end, but the kingdom of Yahweh is getting ready to begin. And so he points to that by giving us certain prophecies that, oh my goodness, I've been teaching on it for a while, and I'm like, okay, let me change up the pace a little bit. Let me go on over into. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going into. I'm further than us right now. But we are the transitional generation. And so it says in the latter days that Yahweh's house will be what? Established where? On the top of the mountains. Mountainous region. Mountainous region. That's why, you know, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, people often misinterpret that by, we shall be caught up in the clouds to meet them in the midair, right? He's talking about mountains. Mountains. Where is the mountain? It rises up into the air. And then every year when we go to Sukkot and we're in the mountains, and sometimes when we venture out, we get to look back and look from where we came and see in the mornings how the clouds settle down on the mountain, and everything in the mountain is hidden from view. Although we can look back, and some of us are still there, we may be going out to get more provision or whatever, but we can look back and see that they're nestled in the mountain and hidden. So we get a chance to see every year as we go into our place of seclusion. And it also says that all nations shall flow to it. So this we know have not happened yet. Right now, the land of Israel is a very protected, secluded place. There's walls up, and you have to get permission, passports, to be accepted either out of your country and into that country. So everything is locked down. But it says here, all nations shall flow to it. Many people shall come say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of Elohim of Yaakov, the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his way. Who? Yaakov? No. Elohim will teach us his ways. Oh, I thought Yahshua was coming back. Yeah. Elohim is Yahshua. Yahshua is Elohim. But I just wanted you to catch that part right here, how it says. And this is prophecy before Yahshua was born into the earth as man. So his name is not given right here. So he's still under the cloud and hidden as Yahweh. Let me read that part again. To the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and let him who? Elohim, teach us his ways. Who his? Elohim, his ways. And let us walk in his paths. Torah. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. He told them to stay in Jerusalem. That's where we're going back to. And so as we continue to look, Isaiah chapter 2 still, verse 3 through 5, and many people shall come and say, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, to the house of the Elohim of Yaakov, and let him teach us his ways, and let us walk in his path. Out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem, and he shall judge between the nations, and shall reprove many peoples, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither teach battle anymore. O house of Yaakov, come and let us walk in the light of Yahweh. Chapter 4, verse 2, Isaiah chapter 4, verse 2. In that day the branch of Yahweh shall be splendid and esteemed, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for the escaped ones. So let me explain. It says that the nations shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Sound like they're farming to me. Sound like they're farming and they're reaping from the ground. Well, let's look and see what he says about that. Verse 2, bottom bullet. And in that day the branch of Yahweh shall be splendid and esteemed. So the branch, are we talking about tree branches? No. We are his branches. And so we will come into the kingdom, and it says, and the fruit of the earth. So you've laid some seed, even here. They wasn't accepted, but you've laid some seed. But look what it says, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for the escaped ones. So those who escape the wrath of Yahweh, the judgment of Yahweh that will take place, your fruit will come to fruition. Because all the ones you talk to, they're going to remember you. Especially if you're not here in this land. They're going to be looking for you, and how can I get to talk to you? Oh yeah, I got some friends over in Jerusalem. And they're going to be your best friend. They're going to want to try to contact you. And so he says, and there is another side to this. Yes, I'm just bringing out that side. But even the fruit that the earth is going to bring forth, riches to Israel, we're going to be nurtured back to health. In other words. So that's what he's talking about here as well. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to look at the spiritual side as well. So, yeah, we are coming into a very special time. Obadiah, and I'll come back to Isaiah in a moment. Obadiah chapter 1, verses 15 through 17. Let's look at the unity or the reunion of the southern and the northern kingdom. Southern and the northern kingdom. For the day of Yahweh is near upon all nations. So this time it won't be an event in Egypt and Israel. This is going to involve all nations. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reward shall come back on your own head. For as you have drunk on my set-apart mountain, so do all the nations drink continually. And they shall drink and shall swallow, and they shall be as though they had never been. But on Mount Zion there shall be an escape, and they shall be set apart, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Now remember, I started out and I said Genesis chapter 15 verse 13, speaking to Abraham, but the nations, your descendants shall be enslaved and mistreated, but the nation who enslaved them and mistreat them I shall judge and bring them out with great possession. Again, we look at this in Revelation, how Israel will reap benefits from the nations. So here we have one of the prophets that have not been fulfilled yet. And so let me deviate really quickly for a theme that you will hear as I'm teaching this message today. In that day, 1,000-year millennial. In that day. So I'm really looking at the millennial reign. In that day, on that day, and it shall be on that day, in that day. So you're going to hear it, a lot of it. And so I'm not guessing about what's going to happen. I'm really sticking with the prophets. And one thing that traditionally we've learned to do with prophets who say that they're prophet, if it doesn't happen, we brand them as false prophets. Well, some of these prophecies haven't happened for thousands of years.
That's right.
It doesn't mean that it won't happen. What it means is it has a time and place. So it wasn't the time nor the place at that time, which is why they asked, are you going to restore the reigns of the kingdom at this time? It is not for you to know what is in the authority of the Almighty. So he was bringing in the Holy Spirit, fulfilling the first four of the feasts, from Passover, unleavened bread, Feast of Fruits, Shavuot. All of those things we can say now Mashiach has fulfilled. Now whether I'm right or wrong, it remains to be seen, but I believe it's the fall feast. As I came into this, I was taught that, and as I've been doing my own study, that's what I also see. That it's the fall feast that will be fulfilled. How Yahweh is going to do it, we have to keep reading the prophets. All right, so where will they escape? Let me include Matthew's, once again, chapter 25. The kingdom of heaven is as 10 virgins, 5 are foolish, 5 are wise. And the Mashiach came, and they were all asleep. And I'm going further into it. They were all asleep. At midnight, the messenger came, and those who were ready went in. Those who had extra oil. But the ones who were not ready said, give us of your oil. When the cry went out at midnight, give us of your oil. They said, we have not enough for you and us. Go and buy from those who sell. When? On the Sabbath? Yeah. So you're going to be caught out there on the Sabbath trying to get some more oil. So when they came, the master came, and those who were ready went in, and the doors were closed. And when they got back, they said, Master, Master, let us in, let us in. And he said to them, I don't know you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. And so when you read this and look at it, keep in mind, the other ones have already gone, the 5 wise. Who is it that he's talking to? The 5 foolish. No man knows the day nor the hour. He's not talking to the wise. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, I think that one is verse 1. He says, there's no need for me to talk to you concerning appointed times. You not are as others who are in the dark. So we're not in the dark. We have light. I love it. Hallelujah. What's the light? The Torah. It illuminates. Yahshuah. Illumination. Let there be light. Illumination. All right, so, but on Mount Zion there shall be an escape. I know I did that already, but I wanted you to cue in on where we're going to be. On Mount Zion there shall be an escape, and they shall be set apart. And they shall be set apart. So the escape is on Mount Zion, right? We also know it as Mount of Olives, because it says he's going to step down on the Mount of Olives, and it shall be part go to the north and then south, right? And so there shall be a hiding place. They shall be set apart, and the house of Yaakov shall possess their possessions. And so that also goes into Yahweh making Israel possess the possessions of the nations. So it won't come from just one nation, but all of the nations. He says, as you have done, it shall come back on you. And so we have been enslaved, it shall come back on you. We have been mistreated, it shall come back on you. So these things shall come back on you, as you have done. And so I am so happy. Isaiah chapter 10, verse 20 through 23. Never again. We've not gotten to this part yet. Never again. In that day it shall be that the remnant of Yisrael and those who have escaped of the house of Yaakov never again lean upon him who struck him, enslaved him, mistreated him, but shall lean upon Yahweh, the set apart one of Yisrael, in truth. A remnant shall return, the remnant of Yaakov, to the mighty El. Look at that. No longer shall they lean upon the ones who they depended on, who controlled economic growth, stagnated, No longer shall that be, but they shall lean upon who? Yahweh. Again, this is before Yahshua was born. But you got to know this is talking about Yahshua in the flesh. And if it's Yahweh, it's Yahshua in the flesh. But as deity is Yahweh. Invisible God, deity. And it says, truth. A remnant shall return. There it is. A remnant. So that's not the whole house. This is why he says, pray that you are found worthy to escape the mighty, and the remnant shall return, and the remnant of Yaakov to the mighty El, that's Yahweh. For though your people, O Yisrael, be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant of them shall return, a decisive end, overflowing with righteousness, for the Master Yahweh of hosts is making a complete end as decided in the midst of all the earth. So the earth is now going through its judgment, and Yahweh is gathering Israel. Yeah. Pointing again, 5 foolish, 5 wise. Not everyone is going to make it. He's saying, though you are as the sand of the sea. We are numerous. Israel is huge. Israel is people who you really don't know and realize are Israel. Every tongue, every people are represented. But does everyone do what Yahweh calls us to do? Not yet. So he says, for the Master Yahweh of hosts is making a complete end of what? The kingdom of man. I want to point that out. The kingdom of man is coming to an end as he has decided, and he will once again live in the midst of the earth. Emmanuel. Emmanuel. He will live in the midst of the earth. But will everyone see him, know him? No. Did everyone see him, know him before? No. But they will in due time. But the first fruit is Israel, those who are wise. So never again will Israel be kicked out. So the first group will go in, and they will be there till the next group comes in. So let's look at the reign of Yahshua as king. And Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1 through 5. And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshai, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful, and the spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him. I told you this has got to be a him. This is someone that we're going to see. And the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahweh. And shall make him breathe in the fear of Yahweh, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and shall decide straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of his lips. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist. Around his waist shall be truth, the belt of truth. On his thigh shall be a name, trustworthy, Tzitzit. riding on a horse, and on his thigh will be the name trustworthy. And so as we see a description here, and I must say again, this is before Yahshua was born, already prophesied of him. So do you think that as the taught ones, as they were asking him, are you going to restore the reins of the kingdom at this time? Do you think that they were thinking about all the prophecies and they were looking at it like, now he's getting ready to reign now? The stump of Yahshuah, which is Jesse, the root of Jesse. Who is Jesse? Jesse is the father of King David. So you know they're going a long way back. 14. David is 14 generations from Yahshua. 14 generations. So they're going back to the father. So 15 generations. And they're saying right here, the stump of Yahshua and a sprout from his root shall be fruitful. So let's examine stump. A stump is a tree that has been cut down. Right. And in the 69th week, he shall be cut down for nothing. No sins of his own, in other words. Yahshua would be cut down. So right here, there's a prophecy of a stump that had been cut down, but it has now been watered and become fruitful. Living waters. Yeah. The spirit, 7 spirits right here. 7 spirits. You remember we talked about the stone that had 7 eyes? And it says, and the stone that have 7 eyes go out throughout the earth looking for righteous, right? So here's the 7 spirits. Notice how Yahweh continues a running theme. 7. Why? Because he wants us to become intelligent, educated, wise in the Torah. Yeah. He could leave us in the dust, but he's not trying to do that. He that hears, he that reads, let him hear, let him understand. He that sees, he that has an ear, let him hear. He speaks it over and over again, that as we read the Torah, that it should open up for us, to us. And so there's the 7 spirits. First one is the spirit of counsel, spirit of wisdom, spirit of understanding, spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of wisdom, the spirit of fear, and the fear of Yahweh. So this is Yahshua who will reign as king. Second bullet, once again, but the righteous shall be judged. But with the righteous he shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth. So he's judging the earth now with righteousness, and shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. Remember, going back to Moshe, his complaint, what if they don't hear my voice? What if they don't listen? What is that in your hand, Moshe? Throw it down. And it became a serpent. Moshe ran. Why? Because he feared it. And then he gave him permission, authority, because what does the rod stand for? Authority. He says, now pick it up by the tail. Had he picked it up any other way, because he was already afraid, had he done anything other than what Yahweh said, he only gave him authority through his words. Pick it up by the tail. So he did. And it became a rod again. So Hasatan is being thrown down to the earth. And as Hasatan is thrown to the earth, Yahshuah is getting ready to come with a rod of iron. And he's getting ready to pick it up by the tail and judge the nations. Hallelujah. And slay the wrong with the breath of his mouth, and righteousness shall be his girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist. Here's the kingdom returning to the land, and the land itself becoming a land of peace. Judge it for yourself. If this is not what the land looks like now, then you know that this have not been fulfilled. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 6 through 10. And a wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and a leopard lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together. And a little child leads them, and cow and bear shall feed. Their young ones lie down together, and a lion eats straw like an ox. And the nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole. And the winged child puts his hand in an adder's nest, snakes. They do no evil nor destroy in all my set apart mountain. Notice where that's going to be. For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of Elohim as waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Yahshuah, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the Gentiles shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed. So what peace shall be in the land, that even the creatures of the land will no longer have to depend on themselves. Their natures will be changed from carnivores to herbivores. All of creation is desperately seeking and waiting for the sons of Elohim to be revealed. So they can't get what they're waiting for until we get it. So it's our obligation to all the creatures of the earth that we open up ourselves to the Torah and become the wise that we are supposed to be. It would be unfair to them who are waiting. They're still being eaten, tortured by every creature there is, including man. If you ever seen some of the ways that they do some of these dairy farms and chicken farms and pig farms and different methods of bringing meats to the table, it is horrible. I mean, really, it's bad. I'm not even going to talk about it. But we've all been judged, and it's all part of our judgment because we too have been led to the slaughter. So looking at the land of Israel, the only place that would be led into a period of peace. And Yahweh has promised a priesthood that they would receive peace. And so any priests that have come before us, it wasn't their time. Because the time of peace doesn't come till the King of Peace comes.
That's right.
So when the King of Peace comes, Hosea, it's either chapter 4 or chapter 6, someone call it, verse 1. Hosea chapter 4, there still remains an entering into his peace, Sabbath peace. Hebrews, yes, thank you. Hebrews, not Hosea. Hebrews chapter 4, right? 4, verse 1. There still remains. So if Hebrews is saying this, this is New Testament, right? For all you New Testament folks out there. This is after his death. There still remains an entering into his Sabbath peace. So the time of peace is still to come. It has not happened. And it will not happen until in that land, until the reigning King of Peace comes. But then there will be a change of spirit and priesthood. So the second bullet says, they do no evil nor destruction in all my set apart mountain. So the whole mountain will be set apart. War will not happen there. War will happen, but not on that mountain. War, disease, evil, all of those things will be put away from the land of Israel and its set-apart people. Well, when we go through heartache and troubles and different things, I'm not saying those things won't be, part of our life. But what I am saying, that we will be healed from disease. We will be, in other words, you're going to live a long and normal life. See, we haven't seen that yet. This generation have not seen that yet. Oh, my grandmother lived to be 101. We have not seen that yet. 105, 110, 115. We have not seen that yet. None of us in this generation have seen the length of time that our forefathers seen. We've not made it to 200, 300, 400, 500. Imagine being a witness. Today I'm 500 years old. Today I'm 700 years old. Today I am 900 years old. Imagine being that kind of a witness. Oh, it takes some thought, but we got to start changing our concept of what the reign is going to be like. We have an age limit, yes, 999. We have an age limit because we can't live a day or beyond. But in the reign of Israel, there will be less things that's going to kill us. All this open air cloud stuff they're spraying on us, all the disease they're putting out. United States have the patent. You can go out and look up certain patents like Ebola and different ones. Why do we have patents on different things? I heard, what was it, bubonic? I know I always have a problem with that one. Plague. We have these flu plagues and different things, and right now we're having a major issue in the earth. The earth is being judged. But they don't know it. They don't realize it because they think it's just normal things. No. Let's continue. So Israel will become a united front, one. And there will be time that there will be an army and a united army, both the southern and the northern kingdom together. Chapter 11, verse 11 through 16. And it shall be in that day, someone say, in that day, that Yahweh sets his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people who are left from Asher and from Mizraim and from Pathros and from Cush. Oh, I love that one being in there because people can't make a mistake of their complexion. From Elam and Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea. And he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Israel and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. And the envy of Ephraim shall turn aside, and the adversaries of Yehudah be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Yehudah, and Yehudah not trouble Ephraim. But they shall fly down upon the shoulders of the Philistines toward the west. Together they plunder the people of the east, their hands trenching forth on Edom and Moab. And the children of Ammon shall be subject to them. And Yahweh shall put under the ban the tongue of the sea of Mizraim. And he shall wave his hand over the river with the might of his spirit, and shall smite it in the seven streams, and shall cause men to tread in it in sandals. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, those left from Asher, as it was for Israel in the day when he came up from the land of Mizraim. So this one is going to surpass coming out of Egypt. But he uses Egypt and says, hey, remember the river there? The Nile? So I'm going to smite it. It's going to become 7 branches, 7 streams. Right now it's one of the longest rivers in the world. But he says it's going to become 7 streams. Why? Because even from that land, what land is beyond the Nile? Today they call it Africa. He says, again, I'm going to reach for those who are in that land. I'm going to heal the land. And I'm going to bring the remnant of his people. See, the 5 wise, they're going to be gone already. They're going to be taken in. But Yahweh is still collecting. But look what he's doing. He's sending out an army. And when he sends out an army, he's going to collect more of his people, the remnant that are still left over from Asher. Who was Asher? They took the northern tribes. So he's collecting both the northern and the southern. And so in that day, look how he flips the name. Ephraim will no longer envy Yehudah. Southern kingdom, northern kingdom. So there will be no animosity between the two of them. I mean, he has it right there. And Yehudah not trouble Ephraim. These two are coming together to become one mighty nation, and will be represented with a mighty army able to defeat any of the nations. Yahweh says, I will be the one fighting for them. And when he strikes the Nile River into 7 streams, they will be able to walk from different directions. And so as I was going through this, I'm thinking the temple that is going to be made, and I don't have it here, and I think it's Isaiah chapter 19, I think it's verse 9, where he talks about Mizraim. And he says, and I shall heal Mizraim. And so the Mizrites will come into the fold. This is why he's never struck them to never heal them. So he says, and they shall be one of 3 with Israel. And so when he strikes the Nile River, there will be multiple entrances to Jerusalem. And he says, and to its border will be an altar. So is that the temple going to stretch all the way from its original point all the way over to the border of Egypt? At one time, I'm like, okay, there's going to be an altar there. There's never been more than one altar. Right. So there's going to be an altar at the border of Egypt at where the river was, and then one in Israel. I know that the temple is going to be huge and the land is going to be huge. So will it stretch all the way over there and there's still one temple, still one altar, but there's an entrance? I don't know. It remains to be seen. Questions. I have questions. Remember, we've talked about the Song of Moshe. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 12, verse 1 through 6. And in that day you shall say, I thank you, Yahweh, though you were enraged with me. Your displeasure has turned back, and you have comforted me. CL is my deliverance. I trust and am not afraid. For Yahweh is my strength and my song, and has become my deliverance. Hallelujah. And you shall draw water with joy from the fountain of deliverance. And if you will, if everybody would stand on their feet at this moment, and I want you to read with me together this last bullet. I believe this is my last frame. No, I do have one more. But I want you to help me read this, because we're going into something that's going to be major. And in that day you shall say, praise Yahweh upon his name. Make known his deeds among the peoples. Make mention that his name is exalted. Sing to Yahweh, for he has done excellently. This is known in all the earth. Cry aloud and shout, O inhabitants of Zion. For great is the set apart one of Israel in your midst. Can we give Yahweh a praise? Hallelujah. Hallelujah. That I want to share with you, because in that day, Yahweh is getting ready to do something. He's going to make a distinction between his priests and others, his people and others, absolutely, his prophets and prophets of the nations. They will never again, from this point, will never again say, I am a priest, I am a prophet, I am a bishop, I am this, I'm that. because the law will go out from Jerusalem. Zechariah chapter 13, verse 1 and 2. In that day, a fountain shall be opened for the house of David, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahweh of hosts, that I cut off the names of the idols from the earth, and they shall be remembered no more. And I shall also remove the prophets and the unclean spirits from the earth. Can we give Yahweh a praise? Hallelujah.